So, welcome to our group therapy session on how to move on with life after suffering a loss. Now, I was saying this beforehand, but now that we're recorded, I want to say it for the benefit of the future, what I'm hoping for here. I had an idea in mind that the people in this room are way more intelligent and have a lot more experience behind them than any one of us, kind of greater than the sum of the parts kind of thing is what I'm hoping for. We are all here because we're in a similar situation. And that situation is that there is a profound change taking place underfoot. And I want all of you to feel comfortable not just talking to me or at me, but with each other as you feel comfortable enough to raise your hand or, overcome your fear of looking like the dum-dum and saying, help, what do I do? And the rest of us can come and help. That's the point of this. This is a conceptual. It can be technical. I can show you some of the stuff that I have done in our environments, but really I want to present a conceptual model that might help you navigate these very choppy waters, okay? So to that end, who are we?
Yes, so my name is Monica Yang. I am a desktop, service desk. They say desktop engineer, but really I'm tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in my group. So there's I've been doing desktop support grunt work for about 2 years now. I'm pretty new to this whole Mac sysadmin thing, and I am the one person on the service desk that knows the most about Macs, so I guess that makes me a Mac sysadmin. So here I am, hooray!
Yay! So I'm David Hester, and I've been an Apple subject matter expert at a civilian optiv within a large agency in the federal government space. I guess I'm not allowed to say what it is, but it'll probably slip out just because. I have a mouth filter issue. That said, you can contact me at the Void Boy. And what I do basically is I've been at this space for about 14 years. And it started when I got there. There were no Macs bound to anything. They were all wild. I worked with Eric Clements and Scott Ryder to develop the plugin and perfect the AD plugin in our NIH space. We got servers up and running. We got them bound. They were serving out to Windows and Mac computers that were bound. And then I spread out the white sheet to anybody who would listen. And that snowballed into a huge collective effort within my optiv, where we meet monthly and regularly to share across our different centers the issues that we have in common and the issues that may be unique to us. And from there, 14 years later, I end up being the person who gets pulled into any one of these centers. I'm currently supporting 5 of them, and that means I'm only one place at once. So I've become more of a consultant and, what would you call it? I guess a systems architect type of person. Is that what you'd say, Tom? I guess. Okay. So, with that, or Gandalf, yeah, that's what Tom called me once a long time. Gandalf the Grey. That's so. Why are we here today? Okay, let's just ask an obvious question. Why are we here today? Well, for off and on for a couple of years, several years here at PSU, MacAdmins, I've been giving presentations with the help of others, some really important others, Nick McSpadden and Hansu Kim and others, that have tried to help make sense of the changing landscape of support services that Apple iOS, OS X, and Mac OS now has impacted on us. That changing landscape has had an impact on us. And I realized last night, as I was going through this again, that every one of my presentations was about disruption. And in fact, the last one was all about how we can make our way out of what I think of as a kind of a decaying opportunity in the career path of Mac desktop support by embracing things like centralized management and automation and glueware coding. And ironically enough, the presentation was how well we had automated our LANREV environment. So, oh boy.
Yeah. So, just as a quick poll, how many of you are running LANREV right now? Yeah.
How many? Come on.
Don't be shy.
3?
Okay.
Right, exactly.
So, if you haven't already heard, LANREV appears to have well and truly died, despite assurances from Ivanti. It's rather telling that they don't have a presence here at MacAdmins, which is unfortunate, because it was in many ways a very powerful multi-platform support product. But now that it's gone, what do I do now? Where do we go from here? So in my environment, my clients had a long-suffering instance of LANREV that was developed some years ago. The person who stood it up left, and then it just kind of petered out from there. So we were long overdue for a new management tool. So for those of you in the same boat, I'm sure you felt the impending doom of, oh God, what do I do now? But fear not, everything will be okay. It's going to be okay, guys.
So we do want to acknowledge that this kind of change is traumatic, actually. It requires a significant shift in perspective away from what's familiar to us and what's comfortable into environments that are entirely strange and new. And that can be quite intimidating. And the fact of the matter is, we can, all of us, at some point in our careers and our lives, feel like we're just not up to the task anymore. In fact, my imposter syndrome alert is just screaming in my head right now. That fear that I think I don't know as much as I need to know, and other people are hoping I know, and it's a big, scary thing, what's going on here. I acknowledge that to all of you here, so that none of you need to feel defensive about feeling that yourselves if you do. And together, maybe today, we can collectively help ourselves through this next big phase of disruption and maybe not be quite so worried.
All right. So with that, it's going to be a lot of work. So just want to go around the room. What alternatives are you all looking at?
Speak up. What options are you looking at?
Oh, do we need a...
We use Case to manage our Mac and PC devices, and then for our MDM, we just set up an instance of Mosile.
What is Mosile?
It's an education-based MDM.
How big is it supported? What's the support like? How large is the install base for you and then for the company? Do you know?
They've been pretty responsive. We have about 1,000 Macs, and I just imported our last Apple order from DEP into it and started setting up software in Apple School Manager, and so we're in the really infancy stage of it, but it's been going really well so far, and any questions we've had, they've been very responsive.
Would you do me a favor in the Slack channel and send us who the heck that is?
Okay.
Because that is brand new to us, and that's great. What else are you guys looking at? You.
Sure. Hi.
Hi.
I'm from Bucknell. Right now, we're a Jamf customer, and I'm pleased as punch with Jamf. But after, well, first off, we don't do a lot for our mobile devices. Right now, our MDM efforts are focused on laptops and desktops. And so, our security guy has been working with the CIO to figure out what our mobile strategy is going to be, and there's lots of documentation being written. But after Graham's cheerful and enlightening presentation yesterday, I'm beginning to worry, okay, well, Jamf is a fine tool for macOS, iOS, but maybe that's not where the future of the campus lies.
What do you, all of you else who are running Jamf think about that statement? Speak. Rich, go ahead.
Honestly, if you're happy with Jamf, I haven't had a lot of concerns about the future that the product, the future direction of the product is taking.
Okay.
If anything, I'm more worried about Jamf being
the one thing I do want out of Jamf is for them to be a little more aggressive at letting go of older OSs. I understand sometimes where they're coming from, but I know that one thing that they've been saying that they don't want, that they haven't implemented yet is, I think it's install application for MDM. And one of the reasons they haven't done it yet is because they want to make sure they can support 1010 adequately. And I'm like, why are you worried about 1010? We're about to get on 1014. Let's drop the 1010 support and just move on.
But my concern is that with the changes we have coming down the pipe, my university might decide to drop Apple products entirely.
Oh, I see.
Which is why I want to be on board to
Oh,
say,
yeah.
hey, we should start thinking about this MDM solution so that, you know,
Right.
A, I have some expertise in it,
Right.
B, can have a job.
Yeah, and that's going to be kind of a grab bag because, like, what are you looking at? Like, if they drop Apple entirely, what are they looking at?
And
Chrome?
again, that's why I want to be ahead of that, so
Right.
I know what else might be on the table, because we're always going to have some Windows machines. It's not clear to me on our campus whether or not we might have more Chrome OS machines or just stick with what we know and just put Windows and Linux everywhere. And again, it could just be
Right.
Adam has spun this nightmare scenario, but
Well,
what he said makes a certain amount of sense to me.
I would say if for the Windows machines, Microsoft's pretty clearly pointing in the direction of Intune is the future, even over using like SECM. So if like they're looking in the direction of ditch the Macs in favor of everyone's getting a new shiny new Windows 10 laptop, Intune's pretty much what you want to be looking at. For Linux, kind of pick your poison. I mean, there's a billion solutions, and someone is unhappy with all of them and writing a new one today.
No, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
So, and I mean, with Android, I think it's going to boil down to, again, kind of pick the MDM solution that you like. But ultimately, I think Google's going to be coming back in and locking things down a lot more so that you'll best be able to manage it with Google's tools and only Google's tools.
What up?
And we're a Google stool, so that
Oh, that's
that's
interesting.
going to carry all the weight for us.
Yeah. And for you, it'll be free. Just like if you have an agreement with Microsoft, Intune will be free.
Anybody else? What else are you looking at?
Well, we use LandRev right now, which is, of course, end of life. We've been looking at a couple different products. We've already looked at Avanti's Endpoint Manager, which is the solution to LandRev. They bought LandRev and suppose they wrapped it into that product.
And
I'm looking at Jamf as well. That's all for the Macs.
how is the Avanti? Have you looked at it?
Oh, yeah, I
And?
installed it. I don't like it.
It is in fact LandRev.
It's LandRev wrapped into what they call Endpoint Manager. So they've added more functionality to it from what LandRev has itself.
And you don't like it.
Not particularly. Had some issues getting it installed and functional. And we're still evaluating it at this point. We've only been evaluating for about 2 weeks at this point right now.
Okay.
We're also evaluating Jamf as well to see what we like
It
about
would be
that.
really cool also if you could share in the Slack channel your experiences with that
Yeah.
product. Because I'm surprised that it's even here.
Yeah.
You know, the vaporware potential of Avanti was very real.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
interesting.
and its functionality, I don't know if it's all there yet. The product seems very compartmentalized still.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we use SECM for Windows.
Yeah. Oof. Hard. Anybody else?
Talk about the Avanti product a little bit. Our sales guys came in and were really pushing it because we bought the Windows product for patch management. And so they're like, oh, you got Macs? We can do this thing too. And then when we got the demo, we saw just how much more it was than just patch management. But when we got our Mac engineer in to look at it, he wasn't real thrilled either. And the thought of having to completely redo his entire workflow to support that product wasn't appealing either. So I'd be interested in to see your take on it when you get a chance to play with it more.
Anybody else? No? All right. So, did anybody get the chance to talk to some of the vendor tables? You know, But you'll have to think about those vendors. Anyone?
I work for an MSP, so we deal with like 20 to 25 different companies, and we use Aggregation as our MDM. And for anyone that has to delineate or have a hierarchical breakdown, Aggregation's been fantastic for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Excellent. What's it based on?
I could not tell you. It uses Ansible, but to
Ansible.
deploy. But
Yeah,
that'd be
Ansible's.
not a question I could answer.
No, that's cool. No, that's all right. We can go out to the table and ask them. But you had a positive experience with it.
Oh yeah, we've been using it for about 6 months. They just rolled out iOS MDM, which we just deployed to our first client, and that went smooth.
And Mac OS?
Yeah,
Excellent.
they just rolled out the MDM probably like a month ago, so it's new, but we haven't had a problem with it at all.
Brilliant. This is, Midas will be known as the Monkey and Jamf Conference, so probably that vendor is well represented. VMware, anybody doing AirWatch, huh?
Yeah, so as a consultant, working a lot of for few kind of different customers, some with security needs and some with not. I play a lot with the Workspace ONE suite, so AirWatch plus VMware Identity Manager. It seems to be quite a common part of my job nowadays to manage device and identity. So yeah, on
Excellent.
AirWatch.
Who else was AirWatch?
Yeah, so we kind of, I feel like I told this story a couple times at this conference, but Gil and I are both new to our company, and we kind of ended up with AirWatch in the environment, and it was kind of an abandoned project of somebody else's, and we kind of took it over after waffling between AirWatch and Micro MDM, actually, which are kind of opposite sides of the the field in a lot of ways. And we kind of went with we went with AirWatch because it was already in house. We didn't have to do additional security review to use it. And being new to a company, we weren't feeling super confident in standing up
Tearing stuff down, huh?
tearing stuff down and standing up like an open source kind of technically pre-release, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's in some really big environments, but like it was a tall order. We have a lot of other things to deal with, so we've been working with AirWatch. It's clunky. It's okay. It's okay. We're trying to just use the MDM component. We're not using the watch. Everything's fine. But it's not bad. It'll do the job. Like we've been using I've been developing a DEP provisioning workflow using the install applications in the style of Eric Gomez.
Eric
if
Gomez,
anybody's seen those, it's all right.
Thank you. Well, we thought what we do is give you some of our examples. And again, we like you, assessed a number of tools and looked at our requirements and pulled together, surprisingly, a couple of different solutions. Because, as I mentioned, I work at different centers. One solution is very vanilla, be surprisingly vanilla as we present it. The other one is the one that inspired this title. It is a Frankensteins MDMonster. And the funny thing about it is we're not really here to advocate one over the other, but to show you the processes and models that we use to make our determination. So rather than say, this is what you do, we're going to show you how we did it. We'll explain what we did, yes, but how we went about making these decisions.
So David and I share the same requirements. We work in the same bureaucracy, with the same mission, with the same security and end user requirements. Though each of us works at a different center with its own budget, IT director, and mission. We need systems that can patch aggressively, can provide situational insight, that are or can be automated because we need the agility and we really want to remove the X factor of human volition. So basically we need everything, all the things. So each of us works in the same large bureaucracy and again, came up with different solutions, and so therefore, there's no one right answer. I'm gonna say that again. In the same kind of organization, we came up with very different solutions, right? So some of you have definitely mentioned this before from earlier slides, but remind me again, how many of you are considering Jamf or Jamf Pro?
Ooh, Jamf.
You?
Jamf.
Yeah.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Right.
Right.
That also counts, sure. I guess who wants it first? You, sir. I don't think you've spoken yet. So why Jamf?
So we have been moved from Lantro, and we have approached ADG as well as Jamf, and so somehow we found Jamf as a good product, and we moved there. But it's been 1 year now, and the problems are starting up now.
Not to badmouth the vendor, but why not? What are the problems that you're running into? What are the limits of this?
Okay, so we are running a cloud hosted instance, and we are facing a lot of slowness issues on the Jamf instance or some other thing, and so when we approach them, when we approach their support, they are coming up with there is advice stating that we should reduce the number of smart groups we have, right? So I don't know what is the purpose of using smart groups then.
Good question.
They'll tell you to only have 10 smart groups.
Less than 10 smart groups, that is useless. We have to do a lot of deployments. See, with Landro, we can create a smart group, just push that application there, done.
Exactly.
See, we had a lot of positive things in Landro, but unfortunately, we have lost that product. But yes, Jamf, yes, even we got certified. We are Jamf administrators now. And somewhat, I can say that the problems are starting up now. We are in touch with Jamf. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. Good. Rich, are you defending or are you?
Thank you. They told you to use no more than 10 smart groups? Yes. Whoever told you that is incorrect. I have far more than 10. Yeah. Yeah, well, how many is a lot, though?
I'm using 87 now.
That's still fine. Unless you're doing like a ton of nesting, like this smart group refers to this smart group, which refers to this smart group, which refers. If you're doing that kind of thing, that will drive it bananas. But yeah, unless you're doing like cast of thousands smart groups, you should be okay.
Thousands. You said thousands, right? I'm just there is making 2 or 3, and they are making this as a nested groups, and then they're telling you just avoid that.
Yeah, where you might wind up in trouble is like if you're referring to like smart group to another smart group to another smart. But if you're just making smart groups that are fairly straightforward, 87, I guess it might depend on what kind of horsepower your server has. Because with Jamf, I found if you want to make it really happy, spec out 8 gigs just for Tomcat, and after that, it's happy as a clam.
So what do you prefer? Hosted on cloud instance or on-prem server?
I'd say that depends on your needs. I mean, I'm running out on Amazon Web Services. I love it.
Same here.
So, I mean, as long as you have your instances sufficiently scaled, like I said, I think mine have a minimum of like 15 gigs of RAM assigned, and those nodes just run Tomcat, and I have I have my database running in RDS, so I don't have to worry about running MySQL or the overhead for that. So I just give a bunch of RAM to Tomcat, and that's it. So, but yeah, it's the guy who told you, or the guy or girl who told you 10, may not understand how that particular scaling works.
I should clarify my 10 comment. That was nested. Okay. And so not 10 total, 10 nested.
Okay.
I left out that part, which completely changes.
Yes.
So sorry about that.
And I'll say, to add to that, I've got hundreds of smart groups in my Jamf instance, and it's perfectly fine. What they did tell me was to cut down the number of criteria in some of those down to about 10. So that may be it as well.
Yeah. Anyone else? No? So I'll tell you about my client's organization. We stand at about 250 people, give or take, and most users have one laptop, one desktop. So that's about 500 machines, not including tablets and mobile phones. And so of the 500, fewer than 25 or so are Macs. And then you may think, less than 25 out of 500, that's nothing, right? But the people who use them are particularly needy users. They're going to be the director of the organization, a lot of division chiefs, one of which is my boss's 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 boss. So why did we pick Jamf Pro? Right, so as I previously mentioned, we had LandRev, which kind of died out, and then in the and in between, we were manually configuring everything. Literally going line by line by line, installing package after package. And, God forbid you forget to, enroll someone in File Vault, or you forget to turn on set power settings. So all of a sudden people say, "Oh, wow, but, I want my machine to be on all the time," right? So with the manual configuration, nothing was managed. Just the kind of the Wild West. They didn't have administrative credentials, thank God, but it was not great. Production applications wise, we have a fairly vanilla environment, nothing crazy. You got Adobe Acrobat, Office Suite, VPN clients, but no imaging software or didn't request boot camp. Yes. But because we have so few Macs, the sister organization of ours was kind enough to let us piggyback off of their existing Jamf server, which they configured. And in fact, they had about 90% of the things, profiles that we needed, and all we needed to do is just tweak it a little bit. So in essence, we have all the benefits of a really expensive management tool for a fraction of the cost. So for us, enrolling our Macs into Jamf made sense. It takes the human factor of the equation and really honestly removes the burden, not removes, significantly reduces the burden on the service desk, which comes right back to me. So we were able to get a test group out that included some of those VIPs running within a couple of months, rather than the order of a year or more that it would have taken had we set up this infrastructure completely from scratch.
So, in contrast to Monica's client, where resources were limited and the demands were minor, the success of the Jamf install there was premised upon a shared tenancy arrangement, which you might want to think about, actually, okay? Sorry, that was an aside to a fellow, not blah, blah, blah. A fellow government, civilian, medical research employee, person, support guy. In contrast to that, I have another client. And this other client came up with something completely different. And we did so because our resource context was much greater. We had greater personnel to draw from. We had smart people that wanted to do coding and wanted to get deep down and dirty into command line stuff. We had resources in that respect. We had resources in a bigger budget. And we also were constrained by our budget cycle, which takes about 8 weeks prior to the end of the budget to prepare for the next cycle's budget. It's complicated in the federal government space. And those constraints brought together an entirely different solution. And that solution was AirWatch. Now, why did we choose AirWatch? Well, AirWatch was already a mature infrastructure for us supporting iOS, okay? It was already there. And AirWatch itself had and has a rather promising, though not consistently exhibiting, robust Mac OS-centric development cycle. They are ahead of that game and are committed to that. whereas we have seen other MDM vendors fall behind. They have decent support. I've also was familiar with AirWatch as a product, as a centralized service to these different centers, and had seen the support wax and wane in its capabilities, and now they're on an upswing. And the APIs. The APIs let my coder do things that we wouldn't otherwise do to automate. Remember that slide about automation out of a job into a career? So we used AirWatch as a touchstone, and we compared all of the other MDMs except for the one you mentioned, the Mosey, what was it? Mosel. All of the other ones, and they weren't significantly better or as good enough for us to dislodge AirWatch. So we start that as our primary platform. Here's the conceptual model I want to present to you. There is no one solution, and there is no solution that does everything. AirWatch cannot do everything well, yet. It is our primary platform. So we have requirements, and you saw some of them. Imagine AirWatch being a pool, okay? And we pour water into this pool of requirements. It will fill it, and then some requirements aren't met and spilled out. I call this the waterfall model. What spills out needs to be caught by another pool. So the second pool for us was third-party application deployment. Now, AirWatch does a pretty good job with something it calls products. And in fact, the products capability, I think, I should give more credit than I do. It's very powerful and granular. But having lived in a LandRev environment where I didn't have to do anything with third-party because we had scripted that to within an inch of its life, having to go back in and every day, or every time a product comes out, oh, here's my payload, let me add this on manifest, let me do this, okay, now I have to wrap it in the package and tell it how to do this, and okay, let me do that again, and I'll put it out. Sounded like I was going back 5 or 6 years in the LandRev world, and I didn't want to do that. So rather than deploy it through a product in AirWatch, I use Monkey. And Monkey and AutoPackager. And Monkey and AutoPackager work very well together for us and give us what we need until AirWatch, which is now integrated some of Monkey, integrates the rest of Monkey, because the biggest bugaboo for me is although we have an importer, an AW importer that JR and Jeremy Baker worked on to let AutoPackager send everything right to where we want it to, could be more flags in there, but still, it's automated. There's no what's called blocking apps capability yet. So if I were to push out the package and I'm working, my end users are working in Chrome, blast, bam. Oh, okay, sorry, didn't mean to do that. So we have to wait for AirWatch to mature. And that's part of this waterfall model also I'm telling you. Take the big pool, select the big one, pour your requirements in, what falls out, bam, comes to the secondary pool until the primary pool grows larger. Then the water won't fall out. It gets even more complex though, because in our environment we have compliance issues that require us to get really deep into the Unix system and manage files, and they are unmanageable through profiles. So we use Chef for that. And until AirWatch can do something like that, or Monkey redesigns itself to do something like that, the third tertiary pool becomes Chef. So there's the waterfall.
What was Chef mentioned, or what were you using?
NTP. So Chef manages for us NTP. It turns off single sign-on capability. It makes sure that log file retention is set. These are parts and aspects of the system that are hard to manage without either
And
getting...
you can't use MDM for that?
No.
Okay.
Profiles don't do those things.
So configurations that are outside of MDM
Outside of
profiles,
profile,
config
MDM profile spec,
Got
yeah.
it.
Now, Apple may change that, hooray, and then maybe MDMs will work. So that's the model that I'm proposing to you, waterfall. fill out your requirements, let them spill till they're all captured, and then over time, as your primary improves, get rid of your tertiary and secondary. Now, that'll probably never happen. I mean, you can't create an all-in-one product. But if you consider it that way, then you know where to put all of your or much of your resources, and consider what other resources you may just supplement it. Go ahead.
This waterfall situation is kind of what we're in. We had Dell Case, it's now Quest Case, and it does all of our inventory, it does all of our software installation, but it doesn't have the MDM portion, and that's why we went with Mocell, because it did just what we needed in the school environment. But it was funny because we have that kind of waterfall.
Good.
Luckily, we don't have a tertiary, but...
Good. Lucky you.
So that's kind of the situation we were in, where Dell Case did everything, but it didn't do profiles. We're using Apple Profile, and that just got bogged down and very, very sad, and now we needed an MDM.
So with that model in mind, though, that's very simple. This is the reality. I had a very, very... my tech was a really good tech, and he really wanted to do his Python coding, and he really believed in automating and scripting himself out of a job and into a career, and guess what? He did. He's now within a completely different company, and I'm stuck managing all of this by myself 1 day a week. But again, to the degree that some of the stuff can go away, eventually we will. Some of the little things that you see here, asset tag, updater, manifest generator, and things like that, these are scripts that allow us to automate the provisioning process. So when something hits AirWatch, we can make sure it's named properly, and then Monkey gets the right manifest sent to it automatically, and then the device itself gets tagged according to property codes, so that it can identify which labs, and then we can use those tags to send out stuff. It's all super slick. And all it's going to take is something, and it'll fall apart, and then we have to go hire another coder or drag Tom back in or something. But that's basically what we had to do, in contrast to her, to meet the exact same requirements. Now, I have to say, I'm not convinced Jamf can actually give her everything that her ISSO needs. And if our ISSO dug a little deeper, we may have to deploy Chef for that environment too. So, Waterfall.
So, no, this is a lot of information all at once. What questions do we have right now? Anything?
Was that cogent anyway?
Clarifications?
Did you get it? The model, does the model work?
Did it make sense?
Is it effective?
Does it scare you a bit? No? All right, so the examples we've provided, I think, provides a good contrast for you. Again, slight variations in our respective environments causes huge answers to be applied to the same question of how we should best manage our endpoint clients. On the one hand, fewer internal resources and a hard deadline led to a decision of becoming a tenant in an already deployed Jamf infrastructure, helping my organization avoid the overhead of standing up my own dedicated system. On the other hand, repurposing an active MDM infrastructure supporting iOS, along with having a top-notch glueware engineer on site, made it easier for David to create a more complex infrastructure and maintain it.
Which he is now really regretting.
But in both cases, the lessons we learned were... Yes, Rich?
I was going to say...
No problem.
So, as I understand it this was from another conversation that we had earlier, that you guys are working from another Jamf Pro infrastructure and you're kind of piggybacking off of it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you guys want to run your own management, but you're having some difficulties with that?
It's not so much difficulties. I mean, we have our own sandbox instance of Jamf, and we have access to all the packages they have. We just don't have, God privileges on it.
If you guys stood up your own Jamf Pro instance, would that solve your issues, or?
Yes, of course, but standing up that Jamf Pro would be impossible, given the inimical quality that our ISSO exhibits towards anything Mac-related at that IC. That's one of the reasons Rich why LandRev died, is not only did we get LandRev in, but then she segmented off all of the internal networks that support 300 people. 300?
Okay.
So nothing could traverse. And then we tried to put it in the DMZ, and she wouldn't allow for the perimeter firewall to be open. So effectively, she sandboxed off the support platform that was supposed to help her secure the Macs. That's not an environment where we can say, hey, let's stand up Jamf Pro. In fact, she fought every step of the way until her boss said, what are you talking about? It's not even yours. It belongs to another IC. Right. And we won the day.
Okay.
And as an upside.
So this sounds more like a person problem than a technical problem.
Yes, except for this, Rich. I mean, if to my mind, if Jamf wants to succeed in a shared tenant space, they ought to be allowed, they ought to have the ability to allow an admin at a site level,
right,
rather than a global level, just the global level, so I can upload packages just for my site.
Well, that's possible. If you just want to upload packages just for your site, that is possible using an API user. And that would be a limited privilege user that does not need full admin rights, because that's how AutoPackager and JSS Importer are working. You set up a user with limited rights that just has rights in specific categories, and those specific categories are basically like, the ability to create a group, the ability to upload a package, stuff like that. They do still go into one big bucket, but at least your stuff is going into the bucket, and you didn't have to ask for admin rights to do it. You asked for a very limited and focused admin, standard user with as complex a password as you want.
You see, Rich, that proves the point that we were trying to make early on, which is the collective group and experience of the people in the room help us bring insights to areas that we had just no idea. In fact, the person who's running the Jamf instance is quite a good Jamf guy. You know him, Jack Bishop. He's been doing it forever, power user. And we made this request, and he I don't know, will they just send it to me and I'll put them in? Okay, because otherwise you get God rights. Okay, but if we get more information about the API, we'll figure out how to write this.
Yeah, actually on the JSS Importer page, they do specify which rights you need in order to upload through AutoPackage and JSS Importer.
Ooh, snap.
Yeah.
Let me post that link into Slack.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Post that into Slack.
That's what I was going to say. Oh, so clear lessons we learned here are essentially the same. Different environments, same lesson.
So one of the things that we wanted to take away is not just the model, and hopefully it's both a heuristic and a hermeneutic, okay? But things that we had to do to get successful at our deployments was, first of all, just let it go. Start from scratch. One of the hardest things I did is, I was losing LandRev, and I would invite vendors in, and I would say, basically, you're not LandRev, go away. You got so familiar with the way a certain process works, and you like the power of a tool, and another person comes in with another product that's designed from a completely different set of constraints and premises, and work through with its very own set of operations and capabilities that are entirely okay, but it's unfair for you to say, you're not LandRev, therefore I don't like you. Let it go. You can mourn the loss, but get rid of the idea that you need to find the familiar. Fresh start. Look at tools you haven't thought of before.
And really on that note, look at using multiple tools, as David did, all at the same time, as they're going to represent new and different approaches to you. Because as we said, no one tool is going to give you everything that you need.
Really importantly, because there are vendors who are bad at this. They're just bad at it. We know what Apple's going to do. Anybody can crystal ball what Graham did. I think he's a bit more pessimistic, and I think he thinks the system's going to be locked down a little bit more tightly than it will be. But we know about MDMification. We know they want the DEP to be separate from the consumer side. and I personally like that firewall, is in the government space, anything the government information touches belongs to the government effectively. So, okay, guess what? This is in fact government equipment done, over with. Security architecture, the SIP stuff, the UA-MDK, MDM and the UA-KEX stuff, that's all, and it's going to get worse, but it in fact means it's going to get better. Because we're not going to be chasing down malware and stuff like that. We're going to be freed up to do more important things with our job than break fixes and stuff. So it's really important to hold the vendors accountable for the future Apple's bringing. Graham says we should hold Apple accountable. I think we can shift or at least include the MDM vendors in our sites and say, what are you doing about this? And if they're not, pull the plug.
So the last point we want to talk about is just making sure that we're asking the right questions to meet your requirements. There's really no point in building something that doesn't meet your requirements, right? So really, what are the right questions?
You can't read these, can you? I'm sorry. These are some of the questions that happened because during the process of evaluating people, we would go and we'd stand up something and go, okay, this met our ability to go and push things out. Show us. Like, oh, actually, our requirement is some sort of dashboard or easily extractable information about the status of the fleet. Uh-oh. We started with pushing and then we became reporting, for example. Or, what are your requirements? Do you need more people than you have to support the systems you're deploying? Some of these, ponder these will be on the slide. Some of these seems obvious to you, but I'm telling you, the only way you understand how to ask the questions is when you get an answer you think you needed and realize you were posing the wrong question to begin with, and you would rephrase the questions. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. And thank you very much for your time. I hope that was useful. And believe me, if you guys want to sit and chat about how to move forward, yeah, let's do it.
I'm on the same tack that we were talking earlier, and I really like the waterfall metaphor. It's something I think I can use to explain to other people when I go back home. I'm interested in anyone who's exploring the jam jar type model where you use Jamf plus auto package plus monkey. So you use Jamf for the MDM type services, but you use monkey for the patch management type services. Is anyone exploring that type of system where you're actually saying, well, Jamf's not really great at patch management right now. I'm going to use auto package and monkey to get stuff in more easily and just use that as my waterfall, if you will.
That's actually really clever because the other aspect of Jamf, I never liked Jamf for our environment, which was a high compliance and so reporting capability thing and patching. And it wasn't until Jamf 10 Pro that it brought at least any semblance of that ability. And so even now, as you mentioned, Jamf may not be that great at it. Okay, find the tool that does the job. Anybody else doing it? Anybody else thinking about doing it? Maybe? Not with Jamf.
Our engineer is looking at the smallest, lightest weight MDM possible just to get the machine into monkey.
Oh, yeah.
And so we don't know what that first part's going to be, but we're hoping step 3 is profit, so we'll see.
What kind of security requirements in general does EDU worry about? I think of EDU as Wild West myself. But in the federal government space now, did you see that slide? 5 agents. They basically what they want to do is watch everything you type in everywhere you go. And that's not paranoia, it's insanity. Yeah, it's 5 rootkits. They get, it's terrifying what they get. But that's a requirement, and I suspect that's not a requirement many of you guys have to deal with. Is that right?
We have a lot of clients
Just thinking about machines we've got right now. So, you know, for our Macs, of course, we got the Jamf agent. We've got Key Server and Snow. We've got
What's
Cisco
Snow?
AMP.
What's Snow?
What's Snow is compliance monitoring software for software licensing compliance.
Oh, okay.
So it and Key Server do a lot of the same things, but not identical things, and it's a long story why we have both. But then, you know, we're rolling out Umbrella DNS, and we're probably also going to have an Avanti agent on our Mac soon. So I'm not super chuffed about all of this, but there's not a lot I can do about it.
So another disruption to ponder is when Apple says, I think Graham may be right, that there's just not going to be any agents, tough luck. What are we going to do to meet the security requirements that need things like Carbon Black and FireEye and these other systems that everybody wants to see what we're doing? At that point, yeah, maybe they just get rid of the Macs than try and deal with the fact that, no, our system's more secure by not having these damn agents on it.
I was just going to go back a little bit in the,
Yeah.
at least in the higher ed research space.
Yeah.
That sort of Wild West mentality is, at least from where we're sitting, is changing. And the big thing that's driving that is liability, mostly around human subjects data and things like that. There have been at the University of Wisconsin, there are more mandates coming from more directions and more audits and all of that sort of thing. And it's all driven by they don't want to be on the evening news for a big data breach. To the extent that actually the university now is tighter in terms of security than our funding agencies, where the university is saying, yeah, I know your data isn't actually PHI because it's research data, not clinical data, but you're gonna, as far as we're concerned, you're now gonna treat it like it's PHI. So it's, you know, it's like the reaction now is over the top, and so there are, you know, we're coming under now a lot of these really, you know, 1,000-page document kinds of security things.
How is that impacting the choice of tools that you are running and will have to run?
Right. Well, that's one of the things I'm here to be figuring out is how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, news at 11.
No, yeah. We in our space, it's WAPO, Washington Post. You don't want to be on the Washington Post. Yeah.
800.171.
What's that?
It's the NIST privacy requirement.
Oh. Yet another?
There was a NIST 800.171. I don't know if any of you have had to implement that. If you don't certify your machines to a certain level and enable all these controls, and something happens, you could lose your federal research dollars.
Oh.
And so we had it bad enough trying to get everything PCI compliant, and then this came along, and so yeah, our security guys are having a good time right now. One thing I wanted to answer your question kind of about what do we do with the lack of agents. I saw a session a couple years ago, and I don't know if maybe it was yours, about kicking all your logs out and monitoring your logs externally and then reacting to the machines. So just, you know, you don't have anything really running on the system except for the default. The OS is kicking the logs out in real time and you're analyzing them somewhere else. So,
can I ask, how many of you are doing log aggregation like that?
Server people are. We're not doing it on endpoints.
How? Yeah, okay, I get. Are you doing it on endpoints?
Oh, yeah.
How? Who? How? I am just very puzzled by this. When you get 3 million fire hoses pointed at you, who and how do they in real time know, oops, this is the issue? Or is it just being collected for after the fact forensics?
People who are finding real life issues live. We have people who are finding real life
That's their
issues live,
job?
and that's their job.
Are they human?
Sort of. They're mostly Swiss, yeah.
Is that an opportunity for machine learning and AI? I mean,
Yes.
because I cannot imagine humanity being able to keep up with that stuff.
I mean, I don't know how much I'm on. They build AI tools
Okay.
that surface things that they review.
Interesting.
And there are services that you can buy that will monitor your log scores.
Right.
How do you certify those services? Who does that? I'm just puzzled by this. I think because I think security thinks that what's secure is if I knew everything. Okay, surveillance state. That's what Foucault warned us about, right? So they want see everything, and who's doing the watching and who's watching the watchers? I'm just puzzled.
Europe is watching the
Oh.
watcher.
Are these requirements, what are they doing to your systems? Well,
using all the CPU and memory.
yeah.
At another government institute, we found it, and I think other institutes have found that conflicts between AV and some of the other scanning utilities have been creating beach ball effects, and Office and Outlook tend to be the victims, or more accurately, the users tend to be the victims. So
yeah, I find some of these rootkits got installed, and our AVs went, no, that's not good, and ripped them out. So we had to tell them, okay, either you believe the AV, or which I do, or you need to reset these rules.
I think we're at this is very weird, like holding a giant block in front of my face. I think we're at an interesting crossroads when it comes to malware and anti-malware and security monitoring tools, where I think it's important to remember that a lot of these things, like semantic antivirus and so on, came about in an era when Windows was being absolutely destroyed by malware, and Microsoft wasn't responding quickly enough to prevent this and fix these errors in the architecture of Windows. And so third-party software vendors came along and provided the kludge that helped us protect ourselves while Microsoft re-architectured and continues to re-architecture Windows to try and make it more secure. And for those of us on the Mac OS side who have not had to deal with that kind of onslaught, we've been in this back and forth for years with auditors and industry requirements that are so Windows-centric that are requiring us to have these things. And we have differences of opinion over how necessary they are. And Apple is making enormous strides in making Mac OS more secure. A lot of their changes conflict with what we want to do, but I think it becomes very difficult to make the argument that what Apple is doing is not making the OS more secure.
Oh, I completely agree.
And so I find like the irony of Apple's making this OS more secure. So we're going to move to a different OS that's less secure, so we can run our kludgy software that offers protection. And I think it's incumbent on us, talking about pressuring vendors, to pressure Apple, that Apple needs to do a much better job of documenting what they're doing to the OS to make it more secure, so that we can go to our organizations and to auditors and so forth and show them why what's being done here is better than what the alternatives are. It's for example, we have a requirement via lawyers to run AV software. And of course, we see the problems with the AV software, and we have data showing that, like, has this ever actually stopped an important malware problem? And it hasn't. It's caused more problems than it's fixed. If you look deep enough, Apple has a white paper in which they describe XProtect as anti-malware software. And that becomes a potential way to then go to auditors and our lawyers and say, see, we have anti-malware software already on the system. But the only way we're going to get that is demanding the documentation. So like the things that came up in the Apple security session, yeah, you can't talk about it. It's not written down anywhere. And it's not recorded. But like that stuff is, I think, where we need to make some inroads.
I think you're right, and the reason I brought this back up is because what I'm eluding here, what I have eluded here out of this slide is the fact that I'm also, because I'm the Mac guy, having to do things like run ESET and run maybe an elk stack or Graylog, so that everything's happening is also being sent to that, and ESET's protecting that. So there are like 2 more systems up here that have been created. The question becomes for us, is that really part of the waterfall or not? I'd like to push that over onto the security folks, but the security folks go, Mac, bleh, you know, and shove it back to me. So this is just a partial reflection of the kinds of complexities that we all face when it comes to, you know, the MDM monster of managing Macs in the near future.
I'd like to supplement that comment about, you know, AV and you know, all the stuff we're being required to put on. On the one hand, yeah, it can cause trouble, or it doesn't help in preventing malware. But the flip side of that, as administrators, is we need to know, have the tools and the knowledge, that's repeating, to secure these machines. Because just because there's no malware on the machine, unfortunately, as you guys all know, there are so many threats out there. And once you get access to a Mac, you can do a lot with it. So knowing those compliance steps and figuring out the balance of, you know, locking down the machines versus letting people do their job is critically important.
I can't help thinking, though, as you were talking, Miles, that with the MDMification of the OS and eventually agentless OS support, right? Support, no more agents, that maybe an MDM service is going to be in fact sufficient, has been for iOS devices, right? Auditors don't ask us about whether we've put, actually some have, and I've had to disabuse them, whether we put antivirus on our iOS devices. Like, you really don't understand, do you? You just want to put that check in the box, don't you? And that might happen with this, but to your point about the threats, that's where the Swiss might come in, and log file retention and analysis becomes the more effective means of managing this our fleet without getting in the way of and negatively impacting on a regular basis by means of these actually really badly designed AV products. But that was just another thing that I just wanted you guys to recognize, is that we're just talking about MDM now, but as a part of a greater security posture, there are more systems that we may have to be responsible for. And what can we do to shift the perspective on that? Well, thank you very much, guys. I'm going to let you go early. Beer bashes. Oh, And again, I learned so much from you guys as usual, so thank you.